Hey y'all, this is Rico. Today I want to show you guys some cool mix techniques that I used on a song titled Little Bo Peep by a band called The George.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing. Little Bo Peep, don't you.
Alright, here we are in the session. I'll just let it run a little bit, maybe starting from the verse.
I saw Little Bo Peep last night, like an apparition in the candlelight, but I couldn't be sure it was her. My complex thoughts turn to mumbled words. You think that you can't sleep, just try coming face to face to face with Little Bo Peep. Don't you worry.
Alright, cool. So just real quick, so you can kind of get an idea of how things are being routed. Top-down mixing approach, and I'll be kind of brief with this because I don't want to get too nerdy with the mixing side of things. I just kind of want to show off some cool features here. So everything is bused to this 2-bus output, and then I have these sub-buses for all my shells for the drums, cymbals, rooms, bass, percussion. You guys can see that. And then I have an outside bus that goes directly to the 2-bus and not the band bus, and that has all my effects for my vocals. And then below that, I have my acapella bus, which has all the vocals in there. And that's how I routed everything for this session. When I gave the band their mix, I did a hybrid mix. So I sent everything out of the computer into some Neve pre's and an SSL bus compressor, and then back into the system. But for this tutorial, I'm just using in-the-box stuff. So I'm keeping everything in Pro Tools and trying to replicate the same type of sound as close as I can.
Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing. And if Little Bo Peep.
All right, so the mix head just to get some saturation and drive, and to tame the transients, and that's going to be a big theme, taming transients and keeping the peaks low. And then again, the SSL bus compressor just to add some glue.
Bo Peep, don't you worry about.
Very subtle,
Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing. And if.
but glues everything together and tightens up the bottom end, because you want a tight bottom end, right? That's going to be nice. It's always nice. Okay. All right, so let's dive in. So here's the band bus. Band bus, I just have some EQ happening, making it a little bit brighter, taking out some mucky muck, and then pulling down some other frequencies here. It looks like 86 hertz, and it looks like 200. Probably making room for vocals. Okay, let's start with the shells. A really cool thing about this record is that the boys tracked it over a 3-day time period live in the same room, all the instruments. Most of the instrumentals, post-production, we did percussion, we did harmonica, acoustic guitar, and the vocals. We wanted to take our time on that. But the main meat and potatoes of this record was all live. So let me kind of show you guys what's going on here, the shells. Right, and you can hear that not only is there the close mics happening from the shells, meaning the kick, the snare, and the toms, but I'm also getting bleed from the other instruments because, of course, we were recording it live, which was really great. It took the band about a year to prep for this. I mean, they know what's up. We've done this before with their previous record, so when we hit the studio this time, they knew exactly what they wanted to do and how to go about it. And it was really, really special to watch them in their element. So, yeah, there's close mics here. Bring in the cymbals so you guys can hear those. Cymbals getting more of the guitar and bass in there. When the rooms come in, it's predominantly the other instruments. Pretty awesome sounding there. And then let's go all together with these guys. Oh, brother, what's that? Yeah, sounds really, really cool. And again, this is hard to do because I could not use my edit window, and if somebody messed up a part, we had to restart from the very beginning. So again, very authentic way to cut a record, and that's what I love about this band is not only are they some of the best songwriters I know, but the authenticity shines in every aspect of what they do, and it's great to see. All right, bass guitar. Let's go to bass. All right, so I got a DI from the bass, just a direct input. It's always important to grab that because you do not want to put yourself in a corner when you are working in post. You want to be able to have the direct signal and the amp. So here's the direct signal. Edge filter. Take out a lot of the mucky muck down there. Let's see what this is at, 50. And then here's the bass amp. Same deal. And you go a long way with EQ, subtractive EQ, to carve out for other instruments. That's the trick. And notice the bass amp, again, has all the other instruments in there as well. But together... Alright, and then a limiter. Just to keep it in place. So I don't want the bass to be too overpowering. Multi-band compressor. And I got this keyed from the kick drum. So every time that kick drum hits, it ducks, or the bass ducks a little bit, just to make room for the beater head of the kick drum. And again, this is something really, really important to do to add more dimension to your mix, because you don't want to fight other instruments. And then some more aggressive EQ. We didn't want to go for this hyper-realistic type of sound. So when everybody's in the room together playing, there's a lot of bass buildup. Even though the live room at Candor recording is a great space, highly recommend it. But there's just certain things that come into play that you need to address when you're tracking live as a band rather than tracking individually. And there's pros and cons to each. All right, percussion. Percussion's awesome. Jackson really killed it on this. I just set up a 414 and a 121 microphone next to each other in the room, and Jackson would just switch out different percussion instruments for parts. I had nothing too crazy, just taking down some of the the gain a little bit, give it a little more headroom. Super consistent, awesome, filtering again, 60 hertz. And then this Valhalla room. I use this on a lot of these instruments. And the cool thing about this is this reverb for me, one, just sounds great. I don't really have to do much with it. And it just gives the instruments a little bit more distance from the speaker, which is important in a mix, right? You want to be able to have that depth and determine how much of that you want for whatever instrument is happening at once, or how much you want the listener to pay attention to whatever instrument is happening at that current time. All right, so percussion sounds really cool. Harmonica. This is Sebastian with the harmonica.
Little Bo Peep, don't you?
Harmonica harmonies, which is kind of a fun thing to say. All right, trim, taking some gain down, and then EQing, taking out stuff that doesn't need to be there. Yep. Valhalla Room, getting the depth of field happening, and then more subtractive EQ. Awesome. Let's go down to the electric guitar. Some of my favorite. For the guitars, I had them on either side of the room. Right, I had the drums in the very back, and then I had the bass on the opposite side facing the drum kit, because I wanted to replicate the stereo image as close as possible. And then guitar on left and right. And I can't remember if Joey was on the left or the right, or if I think Joey was on the right side if I was facing the kit, and Sebastian was on the left. I could be totally wrong, but let's go through that. They brought their own amps in, which is great. I always want to start, anytime I'm working with an artist, I want to start with the gear they have. I remember going in the studio and wanting to use my amp, and the producer was like, no, I got an amp for you, which, I don't know, maybe it just wasn't great. But if artists have solid amplifiers, I really want to try and use those first before I go for anything that's in the house. Okay, so let's look at the DIs. Again, pull DIs. I had those kind of lower in the mix, and then I did a huge filter on both ends, right? Because I just wanted to grab this information, high pass and low pass. But then I complemented it with the guitar amp, and I'm pretty sure it's just a 57 in front of both. All right, so that DI really brings a lot of weight. You might not be able to hear it if you're listening to it on a laptop, but if you have headphones or anything like that, or actual audio monitors, you can hear the difference. Right, EQ. Taking out a bunch of stuff that maybe I just didn't need as much of, just to kind of keep it as consistent as possible. And then CLA 76. Just kind of kissing the transient at the top there, and also making sure that it stays in place. Same thing for the other guitar. And the other thing I really liked about this is leaning into the idea of this 60 cycle hum that they have a lot of in their songs, or just when they play, right? Because we're really trying to capture that live energy, and these boys are typically leaning towards single coil pickups, which it'll do that. If you guitar players, if you guys know anything about that, which I would hope you would, then sometimes they go for humbuckers. The band does, depending on what we're doing, but most of the time it's single coil stuff, which again I think really adds to the authenticity, and that's what we're trying to lean into.
I saw little Bo.
Valhalla Room once again. And then EQ and reverbs. That was a big change for me when I started EQing reverbs.
Like an apparition in the candlelight, but I couldn't be.
All right, acoustic guitar. This sounded really, really awesome. EQ. Just kind of brightening it up a little bit. I like this compressor a lot. The arouser compressor. Again, just keeping things in place. And then, what do you know, Valhalla Room.
I will crawl out of the deepest, darkest crypt.
Okay, now let's get into my favorite part, the vocals. When vocals start happening on a record and you've spent slaved over for days doing all the instruments and it's finally time for the vocals, it's one of my favorite parts of the recording process, because it seems like it just breathes life into the song immediately. And that's very exciting to be a part of and watch, especially with Sebastian and Jackson and Eli, Nathan. I think Joey was out for a portion of this. But yeah, just getting the vocals from all the boys was awesome to watch, because again, they knew exactly what they wanted to do. Okay, so let's solo these.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing. Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing.
All right, so that's that. Got some cool processing happening. I'll show you with the processing on and off. So that was with it on, and then here's just dry.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing. Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing.
Right, so obviously all the vocal effects are going to add a lot more dimension and sonic integrity and width to the mix, and that's what you really want when you're working with vocals, is you want to be able to add width and make that mono image as wide as possible, but making it make sense. Okay, so here is the main vocal.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing.
Okay, so let's kind of go through those. I have a plate.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing.
The little plate for Little Bo Peep makes sense. Okay, and again, it's not too crazy here. Just to add some dimension. It's the first thing.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing.
And then some more reverb. I think this, I just wanted to kind of warm it up just slightly.
Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing.
All right. And then after that, this delay.
Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing.
I love tape delay on vocals. It's one of my go-to ways to get that dynamic and depth and width and all those fun words to use for vocal stuff. I automated this down in a couple parts here, but just kind of let it run in the verse. And the tape delay has been around forever as far as adding character to a vocal. And again, it's going back to the authenticity of this band. They're all old souls, you know? So great musicians, great musicianship all around, and they really work for what they do and what they're about. So all together.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about no thing.
All right, trim, just pulling down some of the gain. And then I have another EQ doing some subtractive, a lot of subtractive EQ, but then added it right Here is like the weight of his voice, of Sebastian's voice here at 204.
Little Bo Peep.
So I wanted that. And then I took out 3K. And anytime I could take out 3K from specific things, I do that because that's like the weird whistling sound.
Bo Peep, don't you worry about.
Right? And then I was thinking about compressing it on this part of the process, but from what I can remember, we double compressed this vocal going into Pro Tools. We had a distressor, and then we also had a Audioscape LA2A, which was awesome. I totally want to get one. And then going to the bus, this EQ is great.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing, don't you worry.
So you can hear that.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing.
Adding top end. I think what did we do? 5 dB there. Yeah, 160. Let's see. 1. Mm-hmm. Yup. Okay. Limiter.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry.
Just to keep the vocal in place. And then here's the de-esser.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing.
To take away all the plosives. Right. Another thing I like to do with the vocal is I like to have another vocal below it, another take, and I don't process this at all, and then I turn the gain down a lot.
Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing, don't you worry about no thing. Little Bo Peep, don't you worry about a thing, don't you worry about no thing.
Just subtle. Different sections of the song to add that in. Okay, and then same basic type of thought process for the background vocals here. Looks like I'm pushing it into some sort of...
Don't you worry about nothing.
Yeah, this channel here, which is really nice. Add some character. I replicated this for everything, or duplicated this for everything. Okay, so trim, EQ, and then I did a de-esser, it looks like, for each one of these for the most part. Alrighty. And then...
Good still. I will crawl out of the deepest, darkest crypt.
Now down here I did melodine this because I wanted to get that consistent pitch with the vocal. And I didn't want it to waver as much as it might have. But I mean, it still does. I mean, we still worked really hard to grab these. Great EQ, all this. Okay, we're seeing all these lines here. Alright, yeah, because we got the reverb happening. Wait for that tail to die out, and then I will show you guys that. Alright, so this is probably my favorite part of this track, and any production that I work on. I might have said that a couple times, but automating reverbs and delays at specific parts of the song to pull out an emotion or a feeling or a vibe is super important. So that's what all of this information is here, all these lines. So it looks like I didn't do it there, but if I pull this up, turn this on, the first thing I did was for that tape delay.
She came to me in a dream last week. I almost crashed.
Right, so I just have it ducking in between those parts there because I just didn't want it. I just didn't want it there.
I almost crashed my car when I saw her on the street, but I don't even think that she knew.
Right, and of course, and it's making room for the other background vocals.
And my tuxedo was blue. Well, you think you got it right.
Here we
Just
go.
try and tell the joke as you saw little Bo Peep last night.
All right, so going into that into the bridge, I automated the decay of the reverb. You can kind of see it here change, just to add a lot more dramatic elements to it.
Last night.
Let's add the music back in, or the instruments.
Last night. Nothing is happening, and I don't know why that is. We stood still.
Right, and then I did a really quick opposite adjustment here to pull down the decay, because I liked that unnatural tail of it pulling back to make the second part of that vocal come through, or the next phrase come through.
I will stood still. I will crawl out.
Yeah. Now I did the opposite here. I did a gradual descend.
I still.
All right, same thing with these background vocals. There it goes. Okay. I'll let that die out there. But I've been leaning into that 60 cycle hum at the end there. Okay, that was a little Bo Peep by the George. Let me know down in the comments what you guys enjoyed about this tune. I've included links below to follow the band, and if you would like to work with me and reach out, I've included links for that as well. All right, y'all, thanks for watching.